Good morning, everybody. My name is Keri Barnum. I am the Executive Director for New Shelves Books. And today we are here for Free Advice Fridays with literary agent from Talcott Notch, Amy Collins. So many of us know Amy Collins because she, of course, was the founder of New Shelves. But in the past year, she has moved from working with New Shelves to taking a step back she trusted me for some awful reason to run this company. And now Amy is working as an agent with Talcott Notch, which means that she's no longer book marketing at all, right, Amy? That's totally separate from literary agenting.
Completely. I'm very, very honored and pleased when my literary agent clients ask me to help them with their social media or to help them with marketing, but now it's just a hobby. I now focus strictly on rights.
So, what is that?
Any questions, I send them to you.
Exactly. That is true. But what is that? What does a literary agent, aside from reading hundreds of manuscripts, because we know that you get queried all the time, what do you do?
I do a couple of things. I do read queries every day. I receive between 200 and 300 queries a month. And I read the pitches and I read the first 10 or 15 pages to see if the book is something I think I can work with. So that's one of the things I do is I try and find talent and authors that I think I can help. Second thing I do is once I think I can help an author, I work with them to get them ready to be presented to the publishing world. Third thing I do is I present them to the publishing world. I'm working right now with an author. We are signing a deal, hopefully today. We've been working on it for a while now, a couple of months, to get a publishing contract with this author. He had a book idea. This is a nonfiction book idea. He had a book idea. He wrote a couple chapters. He got some items together. I thought it was something I could sell. We polished it and worked on it together. I presented it, and we are about to sign a deal with a big house right now. And then my next part of my job after that, after I negotiate the contract and get him more money than the publisher originally wanted to offer, and I get all that set, then my job is to be his advocate at the publishing house. And if things are going really well, hopefully he doesn't need me. But if they're not, I'm his backup person. I'm his advocate. I hope that was a quick enough answer.
Oh, well, we know you don't talk a lot, so we're fine. Guys, we do love each other. I know that we're going to tease each other a lot, but there's a lot of love here. Well,
this gray hair? Keri gave me all this gray hair. This is all hers.
Someone had to do it. I mean, you're welcome. It looks lovely, so I like it.
Well, Bob Eckstein did those great sketches for us. As Bob Eckstein is a great friend to New Shelves, and he did a couple of sketches, one of me, one of Keri, and about a month later, I let my hair go white. So, oh well, maybe I'll just Photoshop a little white in.
Well, he also worked off of my blonde hair, and then he saw me after I changed my hair color, and he goes, do I have to do it all over again?
No. Poor Bob had to keep up with our hair changes. It would be a full-time job for him.
It would be. It totally would be. But the sketches were so awesome. I'll post them in Free Advice Friday later. But yes, so we love the gray hair. And I like hearing, I think it's always interesting that when people think of agents, they usually just think, I get an agent, I immediately get a book deal. But that's not actually true. Getting an agent is just the first step to pitching for a book deal. You're not automatically going to sell your book just because you got an agent, correct?
No. Now, your chances go way up. But it takes a long time. You guys may not know this, but the publishing industry is so slow. Everything takes forever. And for a lot of you who have self-published and you're thinking to yourself, my goodness, it took 5 months to get this book out, that makes me chuckle now, because now it takes 4 or 5 months just to get a deal. And then it takes 18 to 20 months to put the book out. crashing a book schedule, a publishing schedule, I mean, really crashing in the traditional publishing world means that it all gets done in a year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really fast and ridiculous time where everybody gets upset. It'll still take a year.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's very interesting too that when part of that year, because people always say, well, I self-published my book and it came out and it didn't immediately just sell like crazy. And I often say 90 days seems to be the key. If once your book comes out as a self-published author, an indie author, 90 days from the time you launch is when your book seems to really pick up steam. And people then look at these traditional books and they go, but they came out of the gate, you know, bestsellers. And I always try to remind them that part of that is the time that they're spending already published building up steam, the publisher was doing a year before that book ever came out. So, I mean,
Yes.
the timelines are just completely different. As an indie author, as a small press, you can accelerate so much further and quicker than any publishing house would because they just do so many steps differently. Self-publishing sometimes is almost a little bit backwards. You know, we get our book out and then we push the marketing really hard. Whereas, bless you.
Excuse me.
Whereas traditional publishers, it's all the work is before the book's ever out, so that once the book comes out, they've kind of done, not that their marketing is done, but a lot of their marketing has already been in place for a really long time.
It might be interesting to note, and we talk about this a lot in new shelves, but it might be interesting to note that all of the major houses right now, and even the secondary houses, the middle of the road ones, the ones that only have a $5 to $60 million a year budget. I mean, and that's still a pretty big house in my mind.
Yeah.
Their fall conferences are done. Their fall catalogs are closed. They have already pitched Christmas to all of their sales reps. The catalogs are closed for Christmas for this year. It's done.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't mean that the sales reps have finished their job yet, going out and selling to all the stores. But, and especially with everything that's going on in this day and age with, you know, some of the distancing we have to do and the work from home, things are a little different, but the timeline hasn't changed. You know, the fall season is closed. People are now thinking spring 2022.
Right, in the traditional house. Now, and I know for us, we're about to gear up to pitch bookstores with one of our bookstore mailings in February for that summer going into Christmas season, because now's the time to do that. And so thinking, it's hard for us to think that much ahead, but when the industry does, we kind of have to follow suit.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. We have a question from Tara. Do you have any experience with PubMatch for selling foreign rights? Is that a place you're familiar with? Do you have any advice also on subsidiary rights?
I am familiar with PubMatch. I do not use it as an agent. And I've had authors in my social sphere use it in the past, and they have not, I don't know anyone who's personally made a deal with it. I have used certain like PubMatch in the past. I've used the Frankfurt Book Fair. The Bushin has something similar. Truthfully, I've had a lot more luck just Googling houses in the different and agencies in the different languages where I'd like to sell the book, and going to them directly. I've not had a lot of luck, nor have any authors that I know of had a lot of luck with services, not just PubMatch, any services like them. Those clearinghouse services are not as valuable, I have found, for finding and building relationships. Now, if you just want to use them as a place to build an online catalog, and I love that, and that's what I use the Frankfurt system for. I don't use it to actually expect that anyone's going to stumble across my book. I use it as a place to build my catalog, but I still have to do the work of going out, finding the people to connect with, and then I can send them to places like PubMatch and say, hey, listen, go there and you'll see my whole catalog.
That's good advice. And I think for the most part, when you are looking for film rights, foreign rights, anything like that, rarely do they fall into your lap. Most of the time you are having to actively go look for those partnerships and opportunities, or you're working with a rights agent who's doing that for you. I know we all have these dreams of Netflix calls and just says, I can't wait to make your series into a Netflix series. But unless you are topping the charts and making, hundreds of thousands of sales and getting their attention, I don't think that happens very often where they are just calling you out of the blue. You either have to really be moving and shaking or actively pitching.
Well, and it's the same thing now. Book Expo, they've recently announced that Book Expo is no more. But it was the same thing then. You could purchase a spot. There were companies that would sell a spot on their shelves, and you could have your book at Book Expo. And my advice was that's a great idea. PubMatch is a great idea. Book Expo is a great idea. If you're going to work it, just putting your book up there rarely gets you the kind of return on your investment that you're looking for. If you're going to make your book available on a site, make sure that you're also putting your shoulder behind it. That's all I meant.
Right. And Tara is saying that they've already had 2 different rights requests for their books, which is great. And again, it's just taking it, once you get a nibble, a bite, it is actively pursuing it. Because
and that's why she's gotten requests. That's more than I've seen from a number of my single title authors who have signed up.
And
she said not with
direct contacts. And guys, we're going to laugh at Amy because I can and because I love her. So many of you may not know that Amy is currently RVing around, enjoying the great life out in, I think you're in Arizona right now?
At the moment, yes. My husband is immune compromised, and I am, a bit of a grump and a misanthrope. So we have decided to spend the winter out in the desert away from people until the best way that we could socially distance. And so we got in our RV and we're spending the winter out here. So you may notice that I'm actually in my truck right now because it's a very small RV and you guys don't want to see my husband and our dogs early morning.
Yeah. It makes for some very interesting calls and meetings when they're all packed into the RV together. And now, you heard her, Amy invited me to come stay with them. So it's going to get more crowded. Oh my goodness. All right. Oh, we're getting questions. Tow trailer, Class C. They want to know more about your RV, Amy. Give them the details.
I am in a 37-foot Highland Ridge toy trailer. Yep, it is. We've got 2 Harleys. My husband and I both ride. And so we've got 2 dogs, 2 Harley Davidsons, and 2 grown-ups who still love each other despite the fact that we have been in each other's faces now since November. We're hanging out in the desert. We're enjoying our lives. We're riding our motorcycles a lot. And we're staying away from people, and we are living as small as we can to not take up any resources from any other communities. We packed up, we brought our own, we've got rice and beans, and we're not preppers by any stretch of the imagination. I love my life, and we're totally normal human beings who are just choosing to spend the winter in the warmth, in the sun, and just take this very bizarre year and socially distance as safely as we can. And that's our life right now.
Yep. And I'm always jealous, especially when Amy decides to start baking in her tiny trailer for hours and hours, because who wouldn't want that? She's warm, she's baking good things, and she's just hanging out. She works too, I promise.
I do. I work a lot, actually, and thanks to cellular and internet, I've got I literally have a high command center and a desk set up, and I work just as much as I ever did before, except now I just do it from Arizona. until April, and then I'll do it back from my office in Rochester.
For a while. All right, we have ebook questions. So Jacqueline is saying, she's got a question about worldwide territories, and this one's specific to Amazon KDP, but maybe you can give us some insights, Amy. She says, I'm concerned that if I give rights to sell my book to countries where my books might be pirated, it will be dangerous, that her book will be stolen or pirated if she gives distribution rights to certain territories. Do you have any advice on that? Or is it books will be pirated no matter what? What do you think?
Well, if you're talking about going through Amazon Kindle, they work very, very, very hard to keep piracy from happening. They're the best at. I don't know of anyone who works harder at keeping your content on their platform. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to download anything from Kindle and save it as a PDF or do anything with it, but oh man, it takes a larger brain than mine. So if you're going through Amazon anyway, I do not see a huge danger of your book being pirated. Now, if your name was Margaret Atwood, then maybe, but it's very, very, very difficult to pirate off of Amazon, and the expense and the trouble that they would go to would far outweigh any of the benefits for them for any book that isn't, let's say, a Margaret Atwood or a Jim Collins or something like that. So number one is let's do a little risk assessment. And on their part, it's not really worth it. And the second thing is, if your book does get pirated in India, how much are you really losing versus how much are you getting with a huge influx of new readers? You know, this is just your first book, you know, and yes, it happens so rarely. Very rarely does piracy happen. But if it does happen, then you're building a readership for your next book. And I don't think it's going to happen. But the truth is, again, let's wait. There's some benefits even to horrible things.
Right. And
Keri,
I think it's important to note too, as you said, Amy, are you really losing a sale, or is that someone who wouldn't have found your book otherwise, number one? But also number two, if someone is determined to pirate your work, then they are going to do it. Whether you are Margaret Atwood or if you are, you know, Amy Collins, if they want to, if they're invested in it, there are people who have the skill to do it. I don't think most people will find the value in that. But if you do find that your book is up on a site that is not approved or anything like that, you can send a cease and desist letter and, you know, request or demand that they take it down. Now, will they? I don't know. And you can only back that up if you're willing to legally go after them, which most of the time is not worth the time or money involved for the average author. Again, if you're Margaret Atwood, that's a different story. But for the most part, it's not something that keeps people like Amy and I up at night concerned for clients.
Also because the people who frequent those piracy sites, because it's not just that your work is pirated, they then have to distribute them. And the sites where they are able to be distributed and pulled down, those people are not buying books anyway. Do you remember back in the 90s when everybody was, not everyone, but a lot of people, me included, were using LimeWire and other torrent sites to download music? That was not music that I would have paid for. It was just music that and it wasn't pirate. Well, I guess it was piracy then. We didn't know it was piracy then. We such an innocent age.
I know.
But you are not losing a sale. What you are is gaining a reader. That's how I see it.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness, LimeWire. I remember LimeWire. Yeah, I completely agree. It's all in how you look at it. Let's see. This one is for me. Is there a time frame between publishing an ebook on Amazon and submitting the book to draft to digital? No. If you are doing your ebook on Amazon and draft to digital, you can do them simultaneously. Just keep in mind that if you are doing a If you're putting your book on Amazon through KDP on ebook, when you are doing that, you want to make sure that you're not selecting Kindle Select. If you do Kindle Select for the Kindle Unlimited program, that's exclusive. So then you cannot use Draft to Digital. So it's just one of those things, but you can do it at the same time. Now, if you are doing your paperback, you want to make sure you get your paperback up on KDP before Ingram Spark, unless your intention is to distribute from Ingram Spark to Amazon and do a pre-sale, because it will immediately get up there. All right. Good. Jacqueline says she feels relieved. Awesome.
Good.
All right. And Amy, the question is coming. When you originally announced that you were going to be an agent with Talcott Notch, your focus was on nonfiction, nonfiction prescription. Is that still the case, or has it shifted?
Nope. Matter of fact, the few sales that I've been able to make so far have all been nonfiction. I do prescriptive how-to nonfiction, absolutely. I've had a couple of very nice sales of those. They move faster than fiction because the acquisition editors don't have to read a whole book. They're just reading a proposal and they're reading a few chapters. So it is absolutely still a focus, and I'm doing quite well with it. So if you have a prescriptive now, what I don't have a lot of luck with at the moment, if there are things outside of my purview, things that I don't personally have any experience, because I worked for Adams and for Prima and all these prescriptive how-to book publishers for so many years. I can help you with business, I can help you with pet books, I can help you with cooking, I can help you with entertainment. I don't have a great deal of experience with personal memoir, especially Christian or religion memoir. I don't have the editorial contacts, but prescriptive how-to, which means literally nonfiction how-to, absolutely, would love to. I'm also pitching fiction. I'm pitching speculative fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, anything that strikes my fancy. A lot of history. I do a lot of history books. Now, World War II, now when I say that I do historical fiction, I then got 400 World War II books. World War II is a little tough right now. Editors are a little maxed out on World War II. I was very, very excited to pitch a couple of World War II novels out there. And what I heard from a lot of the editors was, Amy, you've got some talented authors. We're full up with what we can't do another World War II book, for the love of God. So, so if you got a World War II book, it's a little tough sell right now. Yeah.
And well, and also, if we're seeing, I just saw another article, is civil war books that are historical, that may somehow have any political ties to today, are also struggling. We had a client of ours at New Shelves actually had a problem with his Civil War book not being able to make it onto certain platforms because of, I think, just bots and keywords. But I was just reading another article from a traditional publisher that had the same issue, that he had a book about another book about Abraham Lincoln, and that one also, it was not making it on platforms. So that may be a tough sell at the moment as well.
Books and authors that use perfectly innocent keywords that have taken on new meanings with things that have been happening in the last few months, they're being caught in the dragnet on social media. I'm not going to get into the right or wrong of that, but I will tell you that innocent authors and innocent, innocuous books are being pulled down on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and these places. And it's friendly fire. It's the innocent being caught in the dragnet. And so now you might want to take a little breather and start working on that light and fluffy puppy book.
Right. Because everyone loves puppies. And if you don't, you're a monster.
Okay. Exactly.
All right, let's see. All right. So now that we know that you started in the traditional publishing world, then you've worked through New Shelves for years with self-published and small press. Now that you're back as an agent, what kind of differences are you seeing between indie and traditional? Are they starting to align and have more commonalities than they did 20 years ago?
Well, indie publishing 20 years ago was vanity publishing, and that is one of the big changes I've seen now that I'm back. 20 years ago, there was no opportunities for, and let's go back 15 years, because 15 years ago 15 years ago is when I started what was then called the Cadence Group, which, and now it still is in existence. It's a wonderful company, and everyone should go talk to Bethany Brown. But then I morphed into, and I shifted over to New Shelves and book distribution. But when all that started 15 years ago, print on demand was just starting. Print on demand has changed everything. And I will tell you that there is a lot more alignment in traditional publishing and independent publishing, because everyone uses print on demand now. I mean, HarperCollins has a number of books print on demand, and print on demand has shifted everything. And Ingram, and you might want to talk about this, Keri. Ingram Spark is going through a number of changes with print on demand, because all of the houses are using it now, and it is here to stay, and it's growing.
Right. Well, and we're seeing that with Ingram Spark. I know I posted on our social media, I think it was last week, that Ingram Spark has shut down a lot of their customer service, except for email in the US, for the current time. And part of that is, as Amy said, with the bigger houses starting to use print on demand and Ingram Spark more for print on demand, what's happening is the demand is going through the roof all of a sudden, and it's like having twice as many clientele, it's twice as many books. And so there are some growing pains involved, I think, but also realizing that Ingram Spark, I think, has come to realize that they are a printing company. They're a print on demand company. They're not so much a service company. So when authors are, especially indie and self-published authors, are having problems with their book, things like that, as they're putting in help tickets, they're not getting answered as quickly, because sometimes they're needing more hand-holding. They need a consultant. They don't need a help issue because it's truly a problem with Ingram Spark. They need a consultant to help walk them through the upload process. And I think that Ingram Spark is seeing some of that, and they're seeing some of the growing pains. And I think that we will see some changes on Ingram Spark's platform and how they run things and their availability. Not that they're going away for self-published authors, but that there will be more of an emphasis on, they are a product company. They create a product for you. They're not consulting, they're not service, and separating that a little bit more, because I think as they're getting the bigger business, they have to. If they don't, they simply don't make enough money on the average self-published author to offer that kind of consultancy, because it's never what they were set up to do in the first place. So we will.
Spark was supposed to be the interface with small presses and single title authors for Lightning Source. Lightning Source still exists. Ingram Spark is the front face to the independent world for Lightning Source. And you're right, growing pains are happening like crazy right now as they lock down. And also Robin Cutler, God, we love her. But she left, she retired for 2 days.
For a minute.
But she retired. And Ingram Spark has said, okay, we need to determine what we can and can't do. And boy, I tell you, it's throwing the industry in a bit of a tizzy right now.
It is. But hopefully.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I'm very excited to see what comes of it. I think usually when you hit growing pains, things get better. They morph. And so I'm very excited to see how that shakes out in the next couple of months.
Yeah. Now Jill is in the chat box. I'm gonna toss that over to you. He seems to have a print-on-demand Ingram Spark KDP question that that I'm not answering, because that's all you, my friend.
All right, let me see. I want to check and see about price on the back cover of my book. I did not put a price on my Amazon book cover, but on Ingram Spark right now, I don't have a price on it either. But should I change it and add the US price on the back cover if it's going to wide distribution? It's an educational book. Yes, we always recommend at New Shelves, we recommend that when you are going for wide distribution, when you're going through Ingram Spark, that you get a priced barcode. That's where you actually put your price right in your barcode. And that makes it easy when you are trying to pitch a bookstore or a bookseller, that their scanning systems can easily scan your barcode and it goes up in their system immediately. People can look and check the price. It just makes their lives a little bit easier. And for the 10 minutes it will take you to create a price barcode and put it on the back of your cover, it's worth the time. Not only that, when you create your own barcode and you do a price barcode, you can choose where your barcode goes on your book for both KDP and Ingram Spark. So that's another perk as well. So I definitely recommend a price barcode for your physical books, your paperback, your hardcover, because it's kind of the standard. Again, self-publishing is not really looked down upon if you do it professionally. And part of doing self-publishing professionally is in the details. The devil's always in the details. So little things like having your price barcode is what will make the difference between your book looking professionally done and like you didn't really know what you were doing. So make sure that you get that done on our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/newshelvesbooks. I have done a tutorial on how you can make your own price barcode. Also, you can get them. I think they're anywhere between $25 to $50 if you pay for them. But if you have 10 minutes and you're not, not afraid to try working with Adobe, it's not hard. You can make your own and put it on your own book and save yourself some money. So let's see. I've got more messages coming in. All right.
Yeah, for those of you who are throwing questions in the chat box, please go to the Q&A box. That's where, I mean, Keri's she's finding questions on Facebook. I emailed her 2 earlier this week from one of my friends who was asking questions, and I'm like, Keri, I don't know, you better answer this on Free Advice Friday, because I don't know how. So she's answering emails, so just go to the Q&A box. That's probably the best way to get your questions answered.
Yes, and people do, whether or not you see it, people chat with us a lot while we're on here, so we see our chat is constantly going. So if I didn't get a question from the Q&A box, or from the chat box, please drop it in the Q&A. Speaking of that question, Amy, I have it up on my email.
You like that subtle reminder? What was that good or what?
That was smooth, very smooth. All right, let's see. And the question is, when you are pitching to librarians, because you want them to stock your book, who do you reach out to? Is it an acquisitions librarian? Is it the library director? Who do you reach out to? And the truth is, it may be different for different library systems. For a smaller library, like the town I live in, we have a small library. They don't have a specific acquisitions librarian. The director makes all the decisions. So the important thing is not that you have a specific title in mind, but that you know who is buying the books. It may be an acquisitions librarian. It may be acquisitions for a specific genre or grouping. So the really big libraries, they will have adult nonfiction acquisitions librarians. They will have adult fiction acquisitions librarians. So it depends on the library system, but in general, you are looking for someone that's got acquisitions tacked to their title, or director. Either one can make a call in many cases, and that's where I always start. Now there are certain small libraries that their director they haven't had a director for years, and now the only person that's really ordering books is the head librarian. So you may have to do a little sleuthing from time to time, but in general, look for the word acquisitions or look for the word director. Those are usually good places to start. And also you can always call and ask, who do I talk to about nonfiction acquisitions? And generally librarians are very lovely people and they'll let you know. So keep that in mind as well. If you really and truly don't know, just ask. They're nice people, librarians, I promise. And I think, all right. And then another question that was asked, we often talk about if you are working with if you're pitching libraries or you're pitching bookstores, we often recommend that if a library or a bookstore agrees to stock your book, that you advertise for them. You advertise on your online platforms. Not for much. You can do a Facebook ad for $10 where you say, I'm so excited that my book is now being stocked at the Rochester Library. Please go check it out if you're interested in, I don't know, how to groom a dog. So then you can do an ad that targets specifically the Rochester area. And the question was, do you have to set up a different ad every single time you get a new library there? And yeah, you kind of do. Because what you're doing is you're targeting that audience. I wouldn't want to target people with information about the Rochester Library if in fact they lived in Boston. That doesn't help anybody. I mean, I might get clicks, I might get, some interest, I might even get online sales, but what I'm not going to do is serve the library that I've told that I will work to promote and market. And I'm not going to be getting people into that library to check out my book. So then those librarians, they absolutely talk to each other. And if your book starts, getting checked out and requested, they talk to their other library systems. They talk to their library friends at conferences. So that's why we do it. And you really do need to set up an ad specific to at least that area. Now, if there's a big library system, let's say it's just in the New York City public library system or something like that, obviously that's going to be a much bigger range, but you do need to be specific with those. And I would tag that library, or I would take a screenshot and send it to them and say, thank you again for stocking my book. I'm so excited to encourage my readers to go to your library. And if there's anything else I can do, let me know. It's always important that we let them know that we're sending them lots of love, because that is the point of libraries. They want traffic. They want to serve their community. And if you can help them do that, they're more likely to stock your book. All right. In the meantime, we got lots of questions. Question about, I noticed my brand new ebook, which is only distributed by Amazon, showed up in ebook Element in Brazil. Seems like it's a free ebook app. Is it legitimate? Oftentimes, and we've seen this before, Amy, where people will advertise having a free ebook when they really don't. It right. is clickbait to give you a virus to get your information. So that's what I would be thinking of first. If your book has only gone up through Amazon and it hasn't been up anywhere else, I would first be Googling whatever platform it is to see if it's something that other people have talked about. But many times when you do that, you will find that it's a front face clickbait to just get your information or give you a virus, not an actual free ebook out on the internet.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet enormous sums of money. I'd be willing to bet Keri's firstborn, not my own, that it is simply just it's a computer bot that went out and scooped up a whole bunch of books that were just, I mean, when they show up on Amazon and when they show up on Ingram, even if you're only on Amazon or in any, that these computer bots, they're not even powered by people. Their job is to go out and scrape book titles and throw them up on these sites just so that these sites can get as many email addresses as possible. Don't sign up. Don't try and get your own book. Just ignore it. It's not real.
Yeah, it's absolutely positively just a data scraper. It's not something that we usually worry too much about.
And if I'm wrong, Keri's Firstborn is adorable.
Well, it depends on the day. Sometimes you can just have her. Let's see. Answered that one. All right, answered that one.
Jill had a second part to her question. Is it in the Q&A now?
It is. I'm trying to find it because we suddenly had about 12 questions in the Q&A. So Jill, I'm going to find you. There we go. All right. All right. So you need a price barcode, absolutely. And then the question is, do I need to resubmit a new barcode with my price since my book was already approved and published without the price on it? Yes, I would. I would take your same cover file, put your price barcode on it, and then resubmit your cover through Ingram Spark. I believe they have codes out right now that allow for free resubmissions or edits. So find one of those codes, get your book uploaded and updated. Again, it's all in the details. And could you skip it and probably get some sales, especially because your book is more academic and might be more in libraries? You can, but it's setting the precedent of being professionally and well published. And so I'd go back and I'd fix it and do it now so you don't forget and know that next time that's what you need to do. I know it's kind of
and for those,
go ahead.
Oh man, the old interrupter keeps coming back. I'm sorry. For those of you who are concerned about, well, if I put a US price on my barcode, what about Canada? What about UK? What you have is a US-based ISBN. Any ISBN that starts 978, the entire industry knows that that's a US-based ISBN, or North America, I should say. And they're going to know it's a US price. What the readers don't know, readers don't even know to look into, that the last 5 digits and that it ends with a 5 or a 0, what that means. Don't worry about that. The industry knows. So don't panic. You're like, well, what if my book sells in Germany? It's cool. It'll still look more professional with a price embedded barcode.
Yes, absolutely it does.
Sorry, Keri, won't do that again.
She's lying. She will do it again.
No, I will. I won't.
But I just love everything. Well, I don't love everything Amy has to say, but she's brilliant. So I'll let her interrupt me from time to time. All right. Does one usually price an ebook as less than or equal to a paperback? Scott, ebooks are usually less. Now, we have seen in the traditional world where ebook prices are starting to creep up. You will probably see for some ebooks that are just coming out with traditional houses. I mean, they're priced high. They're priced at like $13.99, $14.99. But that can also be very strategic on their part where they're offering an ebook, great, but they also want to kind of push those paperback and the hardcover sales. A lot of traditional publishers will come out with a hardcover and a ebook. So even if their ebook is priced at $14.99, it's still cheaper than that hardcover at $26. Therefore, people will still buy it. So for them, it's very strategic. Anything to add on that and traditional pricing there, Amy?
Yes, that your instincts are right. We have noticed that once the lawsuits between the top 5 publishers and Amazon settled, and the publishers won in the sense that Amazon was not allowed to cap them at $9.99 anymore, their prices started going up. They are desperately encouraging people to buy the paperback instead of the ebook. They want, because they pay higher royalties for an ebook. The publishers are only paying the author maybe 10% of net of a paperback, maybe more, maybe less. But they have to pay 25% royalty for an ebook. And I was very confused when the larger houses started creeping their prices up to $14 and $15, because I thought, well, why are you discouraging ebook sales? You save on all the printing costs. And however, the publishers make more money in many cases on the paperbacks, and they get a lot more value. Also, when the resales happen, which happens with a paperback, quite often the publishers don't see anything on that, but they do get the added benefit of the book being able to be shared and the author's name getting out there. That doesn't happen with an ebook. There's a number of reasons why the larger houses are raising their prices, but all I want to tell you is that's the big houses. They can do that. You can't. As a small house, nobody is going to want to spend $15 on your ebook.
Even
there,
$9.99.
Sorry, Keri?
Pushing it. I was just saying for someone who's relatively unknown, and I say this with all the love in the world for everyone on the call, you are relatively unknown. People will pay $14.99 or $14.95 for a well-known author because they feel like they know them. There's already brand recognition. You don't have that. So when you come in, even at $9.99, that can be a hard sell. I see most indie publishers making lots of sales and profit around the $4.99 mark, $6.99 for nonfiction. When you go above $6.99 and you don't have name or brand recognition, you're not going to get the conversion rates. Now, you may make more per book, but you're going to make less sales. So then what happens is that you have to weigh whether it's worth it to have more sales, get your name out there more with a slightly lower cost book, or make less sales but make more per book, because that is something. And especially this year and last year, ebooks in the indie market are crazy. They're hot. When people are at home, they're scrounging around Kindle and they're finding new books to read. And if your competition is selling their books, especially look at the romance and the mystery market, 99 cents, $1.99, $2.99, not as a special, that's as a standard. So when you see that, and then you've got your book over here at $9.99 and you have 10 reviews and no one really knows who you are, your book may be awesome, but unless you really are wowing me with your cover and your blurb, I'm going to go try that guy out for $2.99. So that is why we see that.
And let's be clear, Keri, you're talking about fiction.
Yes.
For the most part.
Higher. And that's why I said nonfiction, I tend to suggest $6.99 to $9.99, depending on the nonfiction. Something that will take people longer to read, that they will hold on to and reference, is completely different than fiction. Fiction we see lower, but even nonfiction, $14.95 is not going to work very well for, again, someone who's relatively unknown. Now, if you are a computer genius who is so well known in the industry and respected, but you've never written a book and you put a book out on some code or something. I know nothing about computers. I should have picked a different example. But if that's you and you're noted in your field, so you have name recognition, but it's your first book, you might be able to get away with that. But that's not most of us. If I write a cookbook, the people who are on my Instagram feed will know that I like to cook, but that's not the same as being on, the Rachel Ray show or something. So you have to kind of realize that part of what people pay for when they pay for a book is not only the story or your expertise. If it's nonfiction, they are paying for the name that they recognize because they trust it. They're paying for the trust that they already have in that author, in that brand, or that publisher.
Yeah. And even the larger houses. Keri, you've got a client, Paula Munet. Mm-hmm. She's a mystery writer, and she's published by a very big house. I mean, I honestly don't remember which one. But I mean, her ebooks aren't $9.99. What they are, maybe they are now, but when her Mercy series first started coming out 3 years ago, I mean, she was in the $6.99, $7.99 range, and she was with a top house. Even Random House and HarperCollins won't put a first-time fiction author, out at $14.99. You have to earn your way up to that.
Exactly. Well, and then what you see is after a while, when the book has been out a while, so Paula specifically, her books did make it up to a higher price. But then once the mass market paperbacks came out at $7.99, her first and second in the series started to go lower down in ebook price. So they kind of match. It's crazy how it works.
Anyone who's asking about pricing, the answer is not, the answer is this. It changes. If you're watching this as a replay right now and it's March or April of 2021 or after, all the prices that we're tossing out, ignore them, because none of them are valid anymore. Things change so fast in this industry. What you should do is go to Amazon, go to Kindle, and see what the best-selling books in your genre are selling for. Grab the top 30 and see what they are, and then take an average, and that's pretty much what your book should be.
Right.
And if you are also doing draft to digital, then go to Kobo. If you're only doing Amazon, if you're curious about audiobook, then go to Audible and go to brillianceaudio.com and go to Tantor and see what the retail price of their audiobooks are. Grab the top 30 in your genre, and that's what and if you did it 6 months ago, you should go back and do it again right now to make sure you're still reasonable.
Exactly. The publishing industry is ever changing and quickly changing. And so if you're not up and willing to revisit your marketing strategies, your pricing, all of those things, then you will be left behind. That is part of self-publishing, is that you have to revisit your market and discover those from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So Randy's asking, how do you recommend pricing your ebooks if you're releasing the second in a series? $99 for book 1, full price for book 2, vice versa. Randy, usually what I see work very well is you drop your first book down a little bit. It should be lower than your second book. The new book is kind of premium price, but oftentimes it will work very well as a launch price, to do a special launch price that's lower if your goal is to get everyone to buy the book and write reviews and have verified reviews. Can't tell you 99 cents without doing an analysis of your genre. But I do usually say your first book is a little bit lower because that's your hook. I know you in particular are nonfiction, so that's not a hard and fast rule, but for fiction, if it's a series, your first book is your lead-in. That is the book that should generally be the cheapest, because that's what you have to get people into. And then once they read your book and love it, they're more likely to pay a higher price for the rest of the series. And that's where you make your money. Almost always with fiction series, you are close to, by the time you do advertising and things, many people are making very little or no money on the first book, but they make the money on the rest of the read through of the series. And just a reminder, if you're putting questions into the chat, they are probably already gone through. So if you have questions, hit them in the Q&A. Yes, Wendy pointed out that on Amazon for KDP, when you price your book over $9.99, your royalty goes from 70% to 30%. So Amazon is kind of putting some things in place to discourage that, but it still happens.
And you know what's interesting is that was a big part of the lawsuit, and they do that for us, but they don't do it to the bigger houses. So that, the bigger houses who aren't going through KDP, they get very different terms, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah. Amy, do you think that there are pros and cons to self-publishing, and should everyone try to publish traditionally, or are there some people who are maybe better off publishing on their own?
You asked this question with 2 minutes left. This is a 20-minute. Okay, I'm good. Okay, here we go. I can do this. I can do this. Self-publishing is publishing. So what you're asking is, you're not asking, should I self-publish? You're asking me, should I start a publishing business and make the first book I publish mine? Mm-hmm. And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know if you've got it in you to run a business. I don't know if you have the money. Do you have the patience, the attention to detail? Here's the thing. I should never start a publishing business. I have no attention to detail. I am a 30,000-foot idea girl. You never want me proofreading anything of yours. But do you have the funds? Do you have the time? Do you have the money to literally learn everything you need to learn to start a publishing company and properly launch your first product? So the answer is no. Not everybody should consider self-publishing. The second part of that question is, should I hire someone to publish it for me? Maybe. Is your book properly edited? Did you do that? Because again, if you're going to hire someone to publish your book, you're still not just the author. You still are, in essence, the producer. And you need to research, does my book have a potential for sales? Does it have a market? Is it even a book? Do I really have a great story or a great idea or great content and great advice? And do people buy books on this? Do other books with the same or similar sort of content, are they selling as books right now? Or is this actually just a magazine article that I'm really excited about? So starting your own publishing company is a huge endeavor, and it will cost 5 figures minimum. Hiring someone to publish it for you is a great option. Co-publishing, hybrid publishing, whatever you want to call it, great option. But there's still a co in there. You're still part of the process. And your first responsibility is to determine whether or not your book has a market. And then to get to the real answer to your question, should everyone try traditional publishing? The answer is the same. You'll find out pretty quickly if there's a market for your book by querying agents. You'll find out if your book is if it's ready.
Yep.
Do you have the writing talent? I can't answer that. But have you spent time on your craft? Do you have terrific advice about, Keri was talking about a particular coding language, or do you have a particular level of expertise that you need, that you think should be in a book? That's great. But do you have the writing skills to be the one who actually puts that information forth? I don't know. So it's a huge question, and I'm sorry I'm going on so long, but I love self-publishing. You know I love self-publishing. I launched 2 companies specifically to help people who wanted to start their own publishing companies. That was my life. I still think it's very worthy. Keri and I talk several times a week, just because I'm her new BFF, about your world. But I also think that traditional publishing has some merit. It depends on your situation. If you want to spend all your time and effort working on your craft, then traditional publishing is probably a good choice for you. If you are not a true writer, if you've got content, but writing is not your passion, but business is, start a business. Mm-hmm. Did that answer, Keri, even close?
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think, again, it comes back to so often your goals, your personal goals, whether something is right for you or not, no one else can really answer, because it depends on your goals. Do you want someone else to rep you? Do you want to invest more of the money, but make more of the money? Authors don't make a ton per paperback copy sold in general. Now, yes, they can get a larger sum up front, but as Amy said, with those physical copies, sometimes it's 10% or less that they get from royalties. So know that when you're putting in the full investment, you do get that back, but you have to have a business mindset. And not everyone does, and that's okay.
And very few people get it back. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The percentage of people who make their money back is not high. And you guys may not know this. The percentage of books that traditional houses publish don't make their money back. Most of the books that a traditional house puts out does not earn out. The only reason they're still in business is because the few books that do earn out do so well, they can pay for for them to take a risk on the smaller ones. You're not alone if you didn't make your money back. Lots of times HarperCollins doesn't either.
Right. And a lot of times you have to realize that sometimes your book is a launching pad for your business, for your speaking engagements. Sometimes it does help you build your business and make money in other ways, which is okay. If I know that I would actually like to have a speaking business and I'm in business for something else and I'm using the book to help me get there or to leverage and work with it, then that's an investment in my business that might make sense. But many times writing a book and publishing a book, whether it's traditional or self-published, it's a act of love. It's because you want it out there, you care about it, and it's something you invest a lot of time and money in. I would venture to say no author is going to say writing books is going to get you rich. Unless you're J.K. Rowling, and she would not have said that for many, many years. If your get rich quick plan to retire is writing a great book, go plan something else, because that's not how it happens most of the time. So, and a follow-up question to that, Amy, is if someone self-publishes, do they still have opportunities to be traditionally published? If they self-publish one book, does that mean they're done for?
Not at all. This is a great question, because I have personal experience with this in the last 6 months. So again, if you're listening to this on a replay a year from now, but for right now, let me give you some very key information. I am working with an author who self-published a series of novels about Guinevere and Arthurian legend. I have been a fan of this woman. She was never a client of New Shelves. She's just a woman that I got to know when I speak a lot in public, and I met her in St. Louis. I became a fan. I started reading her books, and she was self-published. Now, I took her on as a client. Actually, she didn't ask me. I called her up when I became an agent and said, can I represent you? She has sold tens of thousands of copies of her books. Mm-hmm. So repping her is it's so easy. I'm going to be able, when she's working on her next book, she has sold tens of thousands of copies of her first series. So I am happily going to take her to the publishing world, even though she's a self-published author. She's not done. It's great. It's great news. However, I have another client, fiction, same story, same sort of editors. She was published by St. Martin. She was published by a large house. Yeah. She only sold 3,000 copies of her book. I'm having a hard time selling her. I'm having a very hard time. I can't get anyone to offer her anything on her next book. So here's the answer. It comes down to the numbers. If you self-published a book and those numbers are out on BookScan, which they are if you put them up on Ingram Spark or if you sold them through Amazon, and the editors see that you sold 500 copies of your first book, you're going to have a really hard time getting traditionally published. Yeah. However, if you self-published your book, and let's say you self-published 5 books, and you can show that you sold 10, 15,000 copies, you will have no trouble at least getting the attention. I won't say that I'm not saying that it's a slam dunk, but it'll be a much easier walk in the park than if you haven't. So it all comes down to the numbers, guys. It doesn't even really matter who published you. What matters is how successful was that first book or that first series of books.
Right. And just a quick follow-up on that. As far as numbers go and how many books is successful, not successful, we know that the average self-published book sells 250 copies in a lifetime. So reality check on that. But also, if you have sold 250 or more books, you've surpassed most self-published authors with your book. So way to go. But also in the traditional world, they tend to sell more. And I think, Amy, it's closer to 3,000 as a standard and 10,000 is a book that did well and will probably get another deal. Is that pretty close to it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, if St. Martin's could only sell 3,000 copies of a book, that doesn't look good. If you self-published and sold 3,000 copies of your book, that looks better. That looks much better. So the answer is it depends. Yeah. And I want to just toss out, I saw that Nita Winter, who has sold many thousands and thousands of copies of her book, she's putting a plug in for the Bay Area IBPA chapter. And I do want to mention that IBPA is a terrific organization. If you are, I mean, while we love Free Advice Friday and I love watching Keri here every Friday, BAPA, I think it's called, but if you're in California, the Bay Area IBPA chapter or whatever IBPA chapter in your particular area would be a great resource to check out.
Yeah, we love IBPA. Any chapter, you know, as a whole, IBPA is wonderful. Well, it's after 11. I've got one last question for Amy. You guys, if we didn't get to your question, I'm so sorry. Please just email us at questions@freeadvicefridays.com with your question. As you know, we've got limited time, so sometimes we can't get to everybody, but if you send them in, they'll be top priority for next week. And Amy, the final question we have for you is, are there literary agents that focus specifically on poetry? Some of those more niche things, are there agents for that?
There are agents that handle poetry, but I don't know of any agent that handles poetry exclusively. Poetry is a really tough sell, but it's also very, very popular right now. Poetry is doing very well. It is growing. There are publishing houses like BOA, BOA, I think I'm pronouncing it right, that there are actual publishing houses where you don't need an agent. You can submit yourself, but an agent makes 10, 15%, sometimes 20%, depending on the deal, of your sales. And a poetry book is going to get a very, very small advance and a very, very small, the sales may not, I mean, maybe you'll become rapport, I don't know, but for the most part, it's going to be a smaller market.
Yeah.
So I don't know of any agents that only do poetry because I don't think they could pay their bills if all they had was poets. But simply go to Writers Market or go to Publishers Marketplace. Those are two sites. Now they both, you have to pay for a subscription, but Publishers Marketplace and also Writers Market, you can, and Writers Market, you can, I don't know if they're still putting out the directory since they've sold over to Simon & Schuster, but there was last year a book, it was come out every year, it was an annual book, where you could actually, if you have a poetry book, you could actually look up the agents that handle poetry.
Yeah, that's good. And I will say, I just looked up Writers Market and their website is currently down because it was sold to Penguin. So that's down, but Publishers.
Sorry, Writer's Digest. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to say Writer's Market. I meant to say Writer's Digest.
Well, Writer's Digest is still alive and well, so you can go there, and I'm putting the link in for publishersmarketplace.com. It's right there, so that's in your chat.
Yeah, I use Publishers Marketplace all the time to find people to pitch to, so you can too.
Yeah, I think that's great. All right, you guys, Amy's got to go. She's got other things to do, and it's after 11. So thank you for joining us. Amy, thanks for joining us. It's always fun to have you back. And you guys, if you want to follow Amy as an agent, because again, she has stepped away from New Shelves and marketing, and she's not doing that anymore. She's very focused on agenting, and we're still buddies. We still talk, but it's very separate. So if people want to find you as an agent, do they find you on the Talcott Notch website? Do you have your own website?
You can, or my website, amysadvice.com. amysadvice.com is where you can email me, you can follow me on Twitter, you can send me a message, you can query me. amysadvice.com is the best place to reach me.
Perfect. All right, you guys, you heard it from Amy, amysadvice.com. Go give her some love, but keep in mind she is agenting, so querying, that kind of thing is her focus. And if you have marketing questions, come on back next week. It's freeadvicefridays.com every single Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Amy, and we will see you next week. Bye.